The last concept we cover here in lessons 8.3 through 8.5 is a very important one. It's something called the power of a test. What the power of a test tells us is the likelihood that we will correctly reject a false null hypothesis. So that's our ultimate goal in running a hypothesis test, is to find evidence that the alternative hypothesis is true. So power, basically speaking, tells us the probability that we will correctly reject a false null hypothesis. It is the complement of the probability of making a type 2 error. Remember, beta is the probability of making a type 2 error. So if that probability goes down, then that means your power will go up, and that's what we like. So there are certain things that positively increase the power of a test. 3 of them. One is just to take a larger sample. If you have a bigger sample, then that means that your mean from that sample comes from a distribution that has less variability than you would have in a sampling distribution for a mean from a sample that is smaller. So when you have a larger sample, that means it comes from a distribution that's less variable, making it more likely to detect a difference between what is claimed about the population mean and what is really true about the population mean. So we can increase the power of a test by taking a larger sample. Another thing that we can do to increase the power of a test is to increase our level of significance. If you go, say, from a level of significance of 0.05 to 0.10, now you only need your p-value to be less than 0.10, not less than 0.05. And it's easier to get a p-value that's less than 0.10 than it is to get a p-value that's less than 0.05. So increasing the level of significance is another means of increasing the power of a test. Now you have to be careful with that one though, because you don't want your level of significance to be like 0.30. Now you're finding anything that has a probability of occurring that's less than 0.30 is evidence against the null, and that's just way too big. We generally don't see levels of significance greater than 0.10. A third thing that increases the power of the test, but I must preface it by saying this is something that's completely and totally out of our control. It's what's called, oh, actually, I forgot I had this third thing in here, is to decrease the probability of a type 2 error. Because if you recognize that power is computed by taking 1 minus the probability of a type 2 error, then if the probability of a type 2 error goes down, then that means your power will increase. But this last one is the one I'm speaking of that's completely out of our control. And it's called the magnitude of the effect. When there is a really big difference between what is claimed and what is actually true, for instance, about that population mean, it's easier for us to detect that difference and find evidence against that claim. Let me give an example here. And I've given this in class before. I'll come back to this. Yeah. So I used the example in class last week about me claiming that I'm a 6-minute miler. I'm really not a 6-minute miler. I'm nowhere near that fast at my old age. I'm more of an 8.5, 9, and on a slower day, 9.5-minute miler. I'm not Speedy Gonzalez by any means. So I might claim that I'm a 6-minute miler, and there's a big difference between what I've claimed is my true running speed and what really is my true running speed. So because there's such a big difference between what I claim about my running speed and the reality of what my true running speed really is, we're going to be able to detect that difference. If you went out with me and took a random sample of my runs and then calculated the average, it's likely you're going to get an average closer to 8.5 or 9 minutes. It's very, very, very unlikely that you're going to get an average closer to 6. So because there's such a big difference between how fast I really run and how fast I claim that I run, our hypothesis test is going to be more powerful because of what's called the magnitude of the effect, also known as the effect size. Okay, so that's a fourth thing that positively increases the power of a test. Now keep in mind, we really never really know if we made the right decision or not. We just either have really strong evidence that we did or not. So keep that in mind. We're hypothesizing. These are the things that can happen. We can make the right decision, but we can possibly make the wrong decision. We, in reality, are never 100% certain that the decision we made was right. Okay? So let me know if you have any questions.